Some issues transcend politics, nations, and possibly even humankind. That's the way that many people view the realm of space, and NASA's latest push to expand its operations in a way that was abandoned over the past several decades. Late last month, history was made when it comes to space exploration, but the mission is about more than just landmark achievements. Many in the field say that this is the first step towards other ambitious goals, with perhaps the most ambitious being finding life beyond Earth.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life.
Mission managers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory near Los Angeles burst into applause and cheers Thursday as NASA's science rover Perseverance landed successfully on Mars, the first stop on a search for traces of ancient microbial life on the red planet. The robotic vehicle sailed through space for nearly 7 months, covering 293 million miles before piercing the Martian atmosphere at 12,000 miles per hour to begin its approach to touchdown on the planet's surface. Moments after touchdown, Perseverance beamed back its first black and white image from the Martian surface, one of them showing the rover's shadow cast on the desolate, rocky landing site. The spacecraft's self-guided descent and landing during a complex series of maneuvers stands as the most elaborate and challenging feat in the annals of robotic spaceflight.
Ron Garan is a former NASA astronaut, Air Force fighter pilot, and decorated Desert Storm veteran. He's also the author of the book Floating in Darkness, A Journey of Evolution, and he joins us now for his take on these latest missions. Ron, it's a real pleasure having the program tonight. I first want to say that you yourself have a very interesting story. I want you to talk about really your experience when it comes to space travel, because that within itself is a very interesting story.
I kind of went to NASA the traditional route. You know, as you said, I was a fighter pilot and became a test pilot, and then I was selected for NASA from the cadre of test pilots. And I flew on both the space shuttle and the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. But actually, my first mission with NASA was not in space; it was on the bottom of the ocean. I spent 3 weeks in Aquarius, the world's only undersea laboratory.
I mean, you've been basically to both depths of the world that people will basically never see themselves. I mean, that within itself is pretty extraordinary. But even over the past couple of years, it seems like we have made some strides when it comes to space exploration in particular. It was something that perhaps the U.S. government just wasn't taking a priority in, but there seems to be a renewed interest when it comes to not only NASA, but we also see private industry. SpaceX is one that is making a lot of headlines as well. Would you say that it is once again becoming the forefront for a lot of Americans?
I think it has always been the forefront for our focus, our being the government's focus. You know, NASA has been working on these programs that are reaching fruition now for years. But I think because they're reaching fruition, they're more in the public eye. And, you know, one of the things that you mentioned was SpaceX. And SpaceX's launch from American soil of astronauts for the first time was a really big deal and something that we've been waiting a long time for. But those wheels were put in motion many, many years ago.
And you're exactly right, because now we are just seeing them come to fruition. And in fact, what we are seeing come to light is at least a push for more. I don't know the commercialized version of it, but not just for people to fly up and back, but also to reuse some of these machines in order to make sure that, for example, when we go up to space, it's not the last time we do so or anything like that. So when you look at the progress that has been made, overall, would you say that you're pretty impressed with the way that things are going?
It depends how you look at it.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I think that we're making great progress right now. And you talked about reusable spacecraft. And one of the things that we need to do is to reduce the cost how much it costs to send something to orbit is just, very, very prohibitive right now. But the reason why I hesitated in the answer is because, I grew up with Apollo, and I'm watching For All Mankind right now, that series, which was a possible path that we could have been on. We could have many, many people living on the moon right now, but we decided to shut those programs down in the mid-'70s, and we're not back to the moon yet. But I think we're on a path now, finally, to go back to the moon to continue our exploration out into the solar system.
And what were the obstacles, I guess, then, or I guess ever since the 1970s? Because as you point out, we haven't really necessarily made the strides that many people, presumably including yourself, were hoping to make at the height of our space exploration. Were there certain obstacles that got in the way? Was it just something that came to funding? Was it the lack of technology? What really was the curbing those ambitions?
I think in some sense we're victims of our own success. I mean, we set a goal to land on the moon by the end of the decade, and we did it. And it takes a lot of rocket fuel to get to space, but it also takes a lot of political will and public support. And I think, with all the other things going on at the time, public support kind of wavered, and with that, the political support and obviously the budget support that you would need to continue those programs. And so the decision was made to end the Saturn V program, to end the Apollo program, we're going to get back there. It's going to turn around.
Yeah, and it looks like we slowly but surely are to some degree, with the events last month kind of being a testament to that, with the Perseverance rover landing on Mars. Sure. When it comes to that mission as well, what makes that unique as compared to maybe some of the other missions that we've had when it comes to at least striving to get to Mars?
Yeah, it's a very, very capable rover. It's just another step in the robotic exploration of Mars, which hopefully will lead to human exploration of Mars. But this rover in particular is really looking for ancient signs of life. Was there ever life on the surface of Mars? And if we were to discover, some fossilized evidence or some chemical signatures that indicate that life once existed on Mars, that would be one of the greatest discoveries in history. But I would want to know, and many people would want to know, is if there was life on the planet, why is there not life there now? And the rover landed in a crater that was an ancient lake. So water was flowing on the planet at one point during Mars history. So if there was life there, why is there not life now? And if there was water there, which we know there was, why is there not water there now? And what cautionary tale could that speak to us on our planet? What does the life cycle of Mars tell us for a potential life cycle of Earth? And what can we do to hopefully mitigate some of those possibilities?
That's really interesting, because oftentimes when I talk to my friends, at least, about this conversation, it's oftentimes about the prospects of what could happen as far as innovation, space exploration. But I think that you do bring up a good point. It's also an eerie conversation to some degree about learning about what could be the inevitable, something that we don't have control over, or something that perhaps is already aligned for us to some degree. But when it comes to this latest mission to Mars too, for example, Elon Musk will say that getting to the moon is one part in order to get to Mars. It's just a stepping stone to some degree. When it comes to this latest mission on Mars, is this just the first step of something that you think is yet to come? Do you think that somewhere down the line it's about getting people on Mars, or do you think that for the time being this is the focus?
Yeah, it's not a first step. I don't know what number it is, but yeah. It's probably the 50th step or something that started. I mean, we've had rovers on the surface of Mars since 1975. So it is yet another step in this journey that hopefully will be the extension of human migration. An extension of human migration that started in Africa 200,000 years ago, and starting in 1961 included the possibility that humans could migrate to the stars. And I think it's inevitable that we as a species become a multiplanetary species. But having said that, it's not like we're going to use up all the resources here on Earth and move to the next planet. Not at all. But what it does mean is that we need to put colonize and to extend the human presence out beyond the surface of the Earth to the moon, to Mars, and eventually the rest of the solar system and beyond. It's just, I think it's what we're destined to do.
Yeah, I think you're right, because as you mentioned, even since the very beginning of time, I mean, our will to go on journeys to discover other things. I mean, it seems like it's something that's almost innate in human beings up to this point. Otherwise, I don't think we ever would have moved anywhere or achieved anything from that point forward. But you said something in the beginning of this interview that I think is very important. And it's back when, for example, when you were with NASA, you were there was more of a sense of patriotism, or perhaps a sense of unity behind these types of missions, something that perhaps maybe went away when interest went away. But do you think that, for example, with these latest type of objectives, the Perseverance rover being the most recent one, the renewed interest in SpaceX, things of that nature, that it could really bring with us a sense of perhaps nationalism or patriotism that maybe could bridge what is happening right now in these divided times?
Yeah, I do. I think there's generally two really big motivators of opinions, motivators of action, and that's wonder on one side and fear on the other. And I think what we're seeing, and why we're living in such polarizing and divisive times, is there's a lot of fear-based motivation going out there. Fear works really good in the short term. But the other side of the coin, awe and wonder-based motivation, I think works in the long term. And so when we do things like space exploration, when we do things that rally people around a common mission, we're successful at it, I think that's a unifying force. Everybody takes pride. And I think it extends beyond just national boundaries. You know, back in 1968, when Apollo 8 circled the moon for the first time, the entire world was unified around that accomplishment. The Soviet Union, you know, a nation locked in a Cold War with the West and a space race with the U.S., proclaimed that an achievement for all of humanity, right? And so I think when we set out and we build things from a foundation of awe and wonder, it's a unifying force, it's a long-term force, and it's something that we can all benefit from.
I think that's very well said, because even when it comes to the Perseverance rover, I saw clips of it being broadcast live in London and other cities across the world, Tokyo as well. So I think you're right that it's not just about something that could unite the United States, for example, but something that could unite all of humanity. And I think that's really important, especially in today's times. But Ron Garan, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. It's a real honor speaking to you. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Alex. Thank you.